All right, so here's the thing. For years, climate change felt like this looming, unstoppable disaster heading our way. The apocalypse, right? But you know what's wild? That entire narrative, the one that said we were doomed no matter what, it's actually over. The era of inevitable climate doom has been canceled. Not because the problem disappeared, but because something fundamental shifted in how we're responding to it. The future that seemed locked in, it's not anymore. We bent the trajectory, and that changes everything about what comes next. So there's this new form of climate denial going around, and it's sneaky because it doesn't look like the old version. It's called Doomerism, and instead of denying climate change exists, it insists nothing we do matters anyway. It's the new way of saying, give up. And listen, this isn't just pessimism, it actively serves the status quo. When people believe change is impossible, they stop pushing for it. The fossil fuel industry doesn't need you to deny science anymore, they just need you to feel hopeless. Doomerism is denial wearing a different mask, and it protects the exact same interests. Here's what actually happened. We successfully bent the curve of human history. Back in 2014, the reality we were headed toward was 4 degrees Celsius of warming. Full apocalypse territory. Coal was king, and doom felt inevitable. Fast forward to 2024, and the projected reality is 2.1 degrees with solar becoming the dominant energy source. That's not a small shift, that's a complete reversal of trajectory. We went from inevitable doom to inevitable transition. This didn't happen by accident. It happened because technology advanced, costs dropped, and policy started catching up. The curve bent because we pushed it. You know what's absolutely wild? We have finally broken the 150-year link between economic growth and carbon emissions. For over a century, getting richer meant burning more carbon. That was just how the world worked. But look at these numbers. The US grew its GDP by 26% while cutting CO2 emissions by 4%. The UK's GDP went up while emissions dropped 35%. Czech Republic, 27% growth, 30% emissions reduction. Prosperity is going up, carbon is going down. They've become decoupled. This is one of the most significant economic transformations in modern history, and it proves that climate action and economic growth are not in conflict. Let me break down the math behind this transition because the numbers are kind of shocking. Since the year 2000, we've built over 4,000 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. Battery storage costs, they've plummeted 97%, which unlocks 24/7 renewable grids. Solar energy is now 10 times cheaper than it was a decade ago. Wind is 3 times cheaper, and both are now cheaper than coal. Chile built this massive battery facility, 142 gigawatt hours, just to handle peak demand from renewables. The economics have flipped completely. Clean energy isn't the expensive alternative anymore, it's the cheapest option, and that's why the transition is unstoppable. So here's the real force driving this transition now. It's not environmentalism, it's not policy, it's raw economic gravity. Clean energy has become so cheap that it's pulling everything toward it like a black hole. No single politician can stop this anymore because the market fundamentals have shifted. When solar and wind undercut fossil fuels on price, utilities switch because it saves money. When batteries drop 97% in cost, grids go renewable because it's financially smarter. This transition is now driven by the same force that built the fossil fuel economy in the first place, profit. And that makes it unstoppable in a completely different way. All right, so China and the Middle East are building green technology at an absolutely massive scale. But here's the thing. It's not for the planet, it's for profit. China is building twice as much wind and solar as the rest of the world combined. The UAE is constructing the world's largest round-the-clock solar facility. They see where the market is going, and they're racing to dominate it. This is the new geopolitical competition. Countries aren't going green out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it because green tech is the next trillion-dollar industry, and no one wants to be left behind. Ironically, that self-interest might just save us. Now, let's be clear. Progress is not victory. We're on track for 2.7 degrees Celsius of warming, and that's still catastrophic for global stability and food systems. The difference between 1.5 degrees and 2.1 degrees determines which ecosystems survive and which collapse. Every tenth of a degree matters. So, yes, we've made incredible progress. Yes, we've avoided the worst-case scenario. But 2.7 degrees still means mass displacement, agricultural collapse in vulnerable regions, and ecosystem breakdown. We bent the curve, but we haven't bent it enough yet. The fight isn't over. Here's the stubborn baseline problem we still face. Steel and cement account for 15% of all global emissions, and they remain incredibly hard to decarbonize. You can't just swap in solar panels and call it done. These materials require extreme heat, chemical reactions, and processes that currently depend on fossil fuels. There are experimental solutions, green hydrogen, electrified furnaces, carbon capture, but they're expensive and not yet proven at scale. Steel and cement are the foundations of modern infrastructure, literally. Until we crack this problem, we're stuck with a stubborn 15% emissions floor that won't budge. Now here's something most people don't realize about methane. It traps 80 times more heat than CO2 over a 20-year period. But, and this is crucial, it vanishes from the atmosphere in about 12 years. CO2 lingers for centuries. So cutting methane right now cools the planet rapidly. It's like hitting the brake instead of just easing off the gas. Methane is at an all-time high from fossil fuel operations, agriculture, and waste, but because it dissipates quickly, stopping those leaks delivers almost immediate climate benefits. This makes methane reduction one of the fastest, most effective climate strategies we have available. And here's the crazy part. Half of all fossil fuel methane leaks can be fixed at no net cost. The captured gas is simply sold, and that revenue pays for the fix. You're literally stopping a leak and making money doing it. There's no trade-off, no economic sacrifice. It's pure upside. So why isn't this happening everywhere already? Because enforcement has been weak, monitoring has been limited, and companies haven't been pressured to act. But that's changing. The economic case is so obvious that even without regulation, it makes financial sense to plug these leaks. Technology is now stripping away the anonymity that allowed methane leaks to go unnoticed for decades. Satellites are mapping invisible leaks worldwide in real time, down to individual facilities. You can't hide it anymore. And the EU just introduced import taxes that penalize methane leaks. Meaning, if you leak methane, you can't sell to the world's biggest market. Suddenly, there's a massive financial incentive to stop leaking. This is enforcement through economics. The combination of satellite monitoring and trade penalties creates a system where leaking methane costs you money and market access. That changes behavior fast. Let me give you some perspective on how much every 1/10 of a degree actually matters. The difference between 1.5 degrees and 2.1 degrees of warming isn't abstract. It dictates the survival of entire ecosystems. Coral reefs, wetlands, Arctic ice, rainforests. Each increment of warming determines which of these systems collapse and which hold on. We're talking about the difference between mass extinction events and ecosystems adapting. So, when we say we've bent the curve from 4 degrees to 2.1, that's massive. But the fight to push it down to 1.5? That's the fight for which version of the future we actually get to live in. All right, so here's where we actually are. We are not at the end of the world, we are at the beginning of the fix. The trajectory has shifted, the tools are cheaper than ever, and the economic forces are finally aligned. Yes, there's still a fight ahead. Yes, every 1/10 of a degree matters. But the apocalypse narrative, that's over. We already proved we can bend the curve. Now we just have to keep bending it. The transition is inevitable, but the speed, and therefore the damage we avoid, that's still up to us. We will fix this. The only question is how fast.